Womanjika everyone, Womanjika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of three families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandans, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The three families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja-dja-wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Moolalic Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
Welcome to the Council meeting. I'm Councillor Piers Tyson, Mayor of Moonee Valley City Council. We aim to get started every second Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. However, sometimes there are some delays behind the scenes that we need to work through, and we appreciate your patience. You can have a look at our agenda online for all the issues that we'll be talking about tonight, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. So every second Tuesday we work through our council agenda, and what that means is working through things from procedural, day-to-day issues, financial reports, all the way up to the most important things in Moonee Valley, in Victoria or in Australia. And councillors can put up alternatives to that, can put up our staff officers' recommendation, and we can debate that and vote yes or no at the end of the day. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Council meeting for the 27th of April 2023, which I now declare open. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to members of the public in the gallery who have joined us tonight, as well as those who are joining us online, and we apologise for the delay in starting tonight. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that their presence may be recorded. And I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent. And finally, a reminder to the public in the gallery that under Governance Rules 75.1, personal video and audio recording in the chamber of the meeting is not allowed. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and pay my respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 2 on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence, and we have all councillors here this evening. On item 3 is the confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 11th of April 2023 and Tuesday the 18th of April 2023 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Sypek. Seconded Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 4 is declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. I have a material conflict of interest in item 9.3 tonight, as for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO in writing.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a general conflict of interest in item 9.4, Draft Community Facilities Management Policy, due to a reason previously disclosed to the CEO in writing.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I have a general conflict of interest with agenda item 9.3 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO.
Thank you. Any others? If not, we move on to item 5, presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations this evening? I have a couple. So we obviously had Anzac Day a couple of days ago, and I attended Council's service on Sunday the 23rd in Queen's Park, along with Councillors Adams, Hodgson, Isa, and approximately 150 local residents. A wreath was laid on behalf of the Moonee Valley community, and I thank all our staff who ensured attendance, respect, and were looked after at the service and afterwards here in the chamber. We also have some fantastic artwork around the chamber from local school students who have done that up for Anzac Day. As well, Keilor East RSL, which is always a fantastic service, joined by multiple councillors as well. Thank you to everyone who joined us. And finally, I understand that a wreath was also laid at Flemington Kensington RSL by Murnong Ward councillors. As well, on a sad note, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Mr. Laurie Lama, whose funeral was held today at St. Teresa's. Mr. Lama was 99 years old, served as a pilot in World War II and was very well known around the community, so my condolences and council's condolences to his family. Are there any other presentations, councillors? If not, we move on to item 6, petitions and joint letters. I understand that we've received 2 non-conforming petitions to tonight's council meeting, as they don't strictly comply with our governance rule 62.3.4. But in the spirit of how these have been proposed, I propose that we move to suspend the provisions in our governance rules regarding the requirement of signatures, address or email addresses, and that will enable me to allow the petitions to be presented to council. So councillors, may I please have a mover that council resolves to temporarily suspend the petition and joint letter provisions in its governance rules to allow for petitions to be received without adhering to those clauses. Moved Councillor Hodgson, seconded Councillor Nation. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillors, do I have petitions? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Council has received a petition with approximately 685 signatures, of which at least 184 are Moonee Valley residents. Some of the signatories are only signed as Melbourne 3000 as a default for online petitions, so I'd think quite a few more of those are actually Moonee Valley citizens. It regards the ongoing safety concerns at the Essendon North roundabouts. This petition follows on from Council's request for an urgent meeting on site with the Minister for Roads to address safety improvements at the Essendon North roundabouts following multiple fatalities on site over the past 5 years. The petition calls on Council to act and demand an investigation from Vic Roads to improve the safety of roundabouts. I'm proud to table this petition with the community on board and thank the petition convener, Hamish Jones, and the Essendon North Traders Association for backing our push for accountability, answers, and for a fix to what the Herald Sun this week labelled Melbourne's most dangerous intersection. Thank you, Essendon North Traders and Hamish.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the letter to the CEO, the petition to the CEO for consideration, and I'll just remind councillors to not speak to petitions when they're moved, but thank you, Councillor Nation. Are there any other petitions?
Yes, Mayor, I have another petition.
Yep.
Council received a petition with approximately 790 signatures, including those from at least 90 Moonee Valley residents, but again, the default postcode of 3000 was attributed to many of the signatures, so I am not... I'm quite sure that number is much, much greater. But this petition requests Council to review opportunities with respect to underutilised space at J.H. Allen Reserve. The petition also requests Council to address the shortage of football facilities in the Moonee Valley municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the letter to the CEO for consideration. Councillors, are there any other petitions?
Sorry, I thought governance rules were suspended, so I apologise for speaking to the petition.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. And just to clarify, that just the requirement for signatures, address or email addresses was suspended. Thank you. I'll now move on to item 7, public question time. However, there's no public questions this evening. And item 8, reports from delegates. Councillors, are there any reports back from delegates? No. We now move on to item 9, reports, and the first report this evening is item 9.1, 366 Keilor Road, Niddrie, lot 53 on PS 026084, construction of a multi-level mixed-use building in the design and development overlay Schedule 7 and reduction in car parking requirements. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. However, I would like to include an extra endorsement condition. Under 1, add in E to read the level 3 external cladding to be a lighter shade of colour to the satisfaction of the responsible authority, and then to re-letter thereafter.
Councillor Byrne, is that what you read out on the screen there?
Level 3 external cladding to be a lighter shade of colour to... Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, are we aware of what's been moved? Just a general acknowledgement, nodding of heads, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. We don't have very much development on this side of Keilor Road. And in a way, it's exciting to see some development and some good development that sticks really close to what we have envisaged for our area. It comprises of a couple of apartments. Apologies, I've got the thing up. The one thing that I did want to take note of, so I'll just say the DDO 7 Precinct 3 has a 4-storey maximum. The proposed is for 4-storey. The ground floor front setback is 0 metres and proposed is 0 metres. And the rear setback is 1 metre and 1 metre. So we're looking at something that's really compliant, except for the rear setback above 3 storeys, where the proposed is 5 metres. The DDO 7 says 5 metres and the proposed is 4 metres. However, overall, I don't think I've seen a more compliant application than this one. The very small endorsement that I've put in here was, I'm very mindful the other end of Keilor Road has a lot of darkness in a lot of their developments. Because this is one of the first ones at the other end of Keilor Road, we know that lighter dwellings perhaps do better from a climate change point of view, and they might not soak in that heat as much. This is very broad. Saying a lighter shade, we could be going from black to basically charcoal. I'm not saying it needs to go from really dark to white, but to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up was that originally when it was advertised, there was a stack of car park out the back, but our engineers actually said no, it would be of better use to have a loading bay. And so I just wanted to highlight that because I didn't want to just ignore it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Happy to support this, and I concur with my colleague, Councillor Byrne. I think this application is an excellent design response, and it's something that I would like to personally see rolled out further down Keilor Road. As is pretty prevalent in the news at the moment, there is a struggle for housing, and I think in this municipality we desperately need to see a diversification of housing stock, and I think this is a perfect example of how we can integrate such housing into our commercial districts. As we've seen in Moonee Ponds, doing so supports our traders, supports our commercial activity, and also provides for a great place to live. So happy to support this, happy to support the amendment. I think it makes sense, and happy to support that with Councillor Byrne. And yeah, I hope my colleagues support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Sypek.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and I do concur with my colleague Councillor Byrne that we do things pretty good at Rosehill when we get planning applications like this, and we've got good people who know how to do proper designs in Rosehill, and I think this will be quite a good asset in the Rosehill ward, and I look forward to seeing this come to fruition. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillors Adams, Bedio, Byrne, Hodgson, Isa, Nation, Sharp, Sypek, and opposed Councillor Tyson. I declare that carried. We now move on to item 9.2, Draft Sports Infrastructure Policy. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
I have an alternative, Mayor, please.
Yep.
That Council resolves to A, amend the draft sports infrastructure policy with the following principle 1, and in brackets, renumber remaining principles, in brackets. Principle 1, the asset. Council will provide infrastructure based on what is classed as fixtures and fittings within a building. And B, bring the draft sports infrastructure policy back to Council for endorsement and subsequent consultation after reviewing the policy in accordance with Principle 1. And C, remove reference to water sports, in brackets, rowing, canoeing, etc., specific items on pages 16 and 17 of the draft strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Is there a seconder? Councillor Isa.
If there could just be a correction to the spelling of principle in point A, please. No.
Sorry, Councillor Isa, you can't
Well, it's just a
speak to the
typo.
motion. So that can be corrected as it was read out. The governance staff will be reviewing it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. We've been looking at this draft infrastructure policy, sports infrastructure policy, for a little while now, and there's still a number of items within this policy that don't sit quite right with me, and it is a very important policy. It's a very large policy. It covers off on how we build our pavilions, which is always a very expensive task of council and a labour-intensive task a lot of the time. So we really need to get the details right in order to ensure that the pavilions that we build in the future are adequate and that align with how we also allocate pavilions to a degree. So there's a number of items within this draft policy that talk about the clubs needing to be responsible for some fixtures and fittings, say for example in a multi-purpose servery and things like that. And I don't agree that the clubs should be tasked with the job of contributing to things like that when basically those sorts of items are our asset. We don't have leases with clubs. I think if we had leases it would be a different story because clubs then have ownership over those buildings. It doesn't happen like that anymore. Noting that we sort of requested this policy to enable us to have a standard across the municipality when we build this infrastructure, which is, they're always big builds generally. So the understanding behind why we need a policy is, yes, understood, but I think if we're not careful, we will really trip ourselves up. And at the end of the day, the clubs within our municipality are not-for-profit, run by volunteers who have day jobs and everything else. And we have to be careful about how much we actually put on a club to contribute to an asset that is not theirs. It's our asset. It's always going to be our asset. So the idea of including the principle 1 around the asset is to focus on how we build a building and fixtures and fittings within it that are part of the asset. So if we can relook at the draft policy with that lens, hopefully we can fix up a few of the issues that are contained in the policy, which is what I just quickly alluded to before with one example. And that's just one example. There's a number of examples. So hopefully we can relook at the policy internally and come back to councillors with an updated policy and then go out to consultation then, which is spelled out in point B, which I think is important. I think we need to look at it again internally, come back to us, and we need to have another bite of that cherry, so to speak, so we can make sure that what we endorse is fair and reasonable and has the best outcome at the end of the day. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. And can I just clarify, apologies governance, if you just go back to the page that it was on. Councillor Sharp, can I just ask, on the screen there in point C, it says strategy at the end, that to policy? Is it strategy or policy, sorry, Councillor Sharp?
Sorry, Mayor, let me see. Sorry, hold on. Draft strategy. I said strategy.
Thank you.
I can change it to policy. No, I've moved it now.
Require an amendment, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you. Look, I don't have much further to add other than I support Councillor Sharp's approach, and I do have the same thoughts in relation to the fittings and fixtures as has been discussed, and would be happy for the report to come back with some more detail around this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Understand the next item is 9.3, response to notice of motion number 2022/19, level crossings at Puckle Street, Holmes Road and Park Street, Moonee Ponds, and councillors will be leaving the chamber as they have declared a conflict of interest in this item. I might repeat the title. So, response to notice of motion number 2022/19, level crossings at Puckle Street / Holmes Road and Park Street, Moonee Ponds. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative that Council resolves to A, note the contents of the report, B, note the advocacy efforts to date regarding the removal of the existing level crossings at Puckle Street / Holmes Road and Park Street, Moonee Ponds. C, seek an additional report to come to Council no later than 10 October 2023, including 1, further analysis of the data within the report in regards to the relative ranking of Puckle Street and Park Street level crossings and how these crossings compare with those already removed under the level crossing removal project, open brackets, incorporating ALCAM rankings of crossing safety, traffic counts and boomgate downtime, close brackets. This data will also include a traffic count prediction for the Puckle Street crossing up to 2040 based on MPAC and MV 2040 population estimates, and an additional train traffic prediction based on the increase of services or train traffic on the Craigieburn line as a result of the completion of Metro Tunnel, and how this is predicted to impact the boomgate downtime at both crossings. 2, an impact analysis of road under / rail under options at both crossings, including which options are achievable with the now completed road under solution at Buckley Street and the existing rail under solution at Maribyrnong Road. 3, a note on any relevant... sorry, I've got the old one here. A note on any relevant property matters based on either option at each site. 4, a note on any community benefit / uplift based on either option at each site, open brackets, such as a new DDA compliant station at Moonee Ponds while retaining the existing structure, new public open space, etc., close brackets. 5, basic design visuals of how either option would work at each site. 6, a proposed community consultation plan to seek further input from members of the community. 7, an advocacy plan to continue to advocate for what Council deems as the preferred solution at each site based on the report above. D, write to the level crossing removal project to seek any data, information, drawings or relevant information to the above that may assist with Council preparing the report above. And E, in the interim, prior to the next report coming to Council, endorse the continued advocacy for the removal of the 2 level crossings with relevant state government agencies, ministers and members of Parliament.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Can I just ask you to read the first 10 words of D out again?
It's project, not authority. Yeah, they changed their name.
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
Yeah.
And obviously that was a lengthy motion. can I just clarify with governance, apart from in point 3 of property matters, were there any other changes from what was distributed? Just a shake or nod of the head. Thank you. Thanks, governance. Is there a seconder? Councillor Adams. Councillor Nation.
Thank you. And there wasn't any other changes, was there? I did read it out. I read it out correctly, didn't I?
Is that a point of clarification?
Yeah, no,
yes?
Okay, I got you. No, I was just hoping I did read out things as I did, so thank you. Thanks, Mayor. So a previous notice of motion I raised through the chambers was to look at Council's advocacy for the level crossing removals at Puckle Street and Park Street, Moonee Ponds. We obviously did an extensive piece of work when the Buckley Street level crossing was proposed and then ended up being completed in regards to what Council's preferred method of delivery would be at Buckley Street. We advocated hard for rail under. We did a lot of work for rail under. The subsequent fix was the road under, which we know now. But the question was then posed to me recently, how does that solution now impact Council's advocacy for Puckle Street and Park Street? And while I knew in impact there were plenty of references that Council should continue to advocate for, look at the potential to advocate for the level crossing removal at Puckle Street, there was that missing piece of we haven't really been as proactive because we haven't got it outlined in our advocacy strategy. And if it is something that we do believe we need to advocate for, then we sort of need the facts, the figures, and the actual solution we're asking for to then be able to go to government and say, we think this is the solution that should be implemented at either site. These are the facts to back it up. This is the community that's on board. So we are asking for you to consider this particular crossing removal. We haven't got that to date, and there are nuances with the Park Street level crossing, which what solution could actually work there now that Buckley Street is road under. And again, that's the piece of work that will build on this existing report that officers have completed, and that will hopefully come back for us as councillors to make a much more informed decision. Some of the other things that are asked through the motion are things that will give us the capacity as councillors to shape our advocacy position. In particular, some of it looks at what the actual data is for those crossings. Some of it is publicly available, some isn't. And it also looks at not just whether or not our data shows we meet the threshold for removal, but also what's already been removed. And if our crossing is comparable to what's already been removed, then we deserve in the West to be given what they're getting down on the Frankston line or the Sandringham line. Some basic mock-ups would be fantastic so we can understand how these solutions would work. And then a proposed consultation plan with the community to find out if the community are on board as well. And I think that's important because we had a big swarm of community support with the Buckley Street level crossing. I know a lot of those people are still passionate, but if we're going to advocate for solutions, then we need to keep them on board. Some of the other points that I just want to raise, and I thank the community members for getting in touch with me, some of the points that they have raised, and I'll just read them out. In regards to the actual report, the MVCC analysis of relative ranking of the Puckle Street and Park Street crossings does ignore that many of the crossings selected for the removal, including recent ones, fall below the rankings for Puckle Street and a lesser number below Park Street. For example, the Victorian Government announced the removal of 8 crossings on the Upfield line and 4 on the Melton line prior to the November 2022 election. Now, none of these crossings are as dangerous as the Puckle Street crossing, according to ALCAM rankings of crossing safety, and only 4 are more dangerous than Park Street. Only 3 of the 12 carry more traffic than Puckle Street, and all of them have boom gates down for less time. LXRP documents for 2017, actually obtained through FOI, show that Puckle Street has 8,800 vehicles passing through. This is from 2017, and Park Street 6,063, which is considerable more than what you find in our impact data. The report also doesn't consider increases in traffic going forward, particularly due to significant developments in the MPAC area, including the Moonee Valley Racecourse project. The MPAC report estimates an increase in population of over 10,000 by 2040 for MPAC alone, and therefore again the report will look for how those population figures do impact the traffic numbers. The report also doesn't consider that additional trains will be running on the Craigieburn line once the Metro Tunnel has been completed, and we know that the Craigieburn line is already at a stretch, and further services would increase boom time, downtime. If I may, just 30 seconds. Thank you very much, Mayor. And some of the other issues in regards to Moonee Pond Station having curved platforms, ignore the options to build the platforms under Puckle Street if a rail under road option is used, which would allow the platforms to be straightened. As mentioned in the MVCC report, curved platforms have safety and DDA issues, which will not be resolved if the platforms remain as is. And that's similar to Essendon Station. Moonee Pond Station is probably not DDA compliant due to the steepness of the access ramps. Thank you for the community members for getting in touch with some of those comments, and I would commend my alternatives councillors for their consideration. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Adams. Nothing to add, thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion?
83 minutes.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank Councillor Nation for this alternative, because I was not going to be able to vote for the recommendation in our notes tonight, basically because the notice of motion that was raised by yourself, Councillor Nation, asked for a lot more information than I felt was provided in the report tonight, and I am very careful about supporting the removal of Puckle Street without knowing the implications, because in any scenario there's going to be major implications on businesses or residents in the area if we remove the level crossing. That's not to say that the risks outweigh the benefits. I'm not even contemplating that at the moment, but for me, I can't pursue a certain angle without knowing the major ramifications, because there is only going to be major ramifications here unless we just stop cars going through completely and then we're closing the road. So there's major ramifications in all circumstances. And considering the scars that Buckley Street have left on me when that was all happening, it's not an easy process, it's a very difficult process. So we need as much information as we can garner, or for myself anyway, to enable a way forward, I believe, one that at least we know what the impacts will be, because it's either going to be road under, Skyrail, rail under, and it's going to impact businesses and residents 2,000%, hugely, either way. So, yeah, very happy to support this and to get as much information as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, thanks, Councillor Nation, for bringing the notice of motion originally. I remember when you brought it to the chamber, and it's, the removal of the level crossings is something I've consistently supported. I won't be able to support your motion tonight, though, for a couple of reasons, and none of those reasons are to do with my support for the level crossing removal, which is something I remain consistently supportive of. This motion was brought to us very late tonight, and look, with all of the other important items on the agenda, I haven't had a chance to to read through this very detailed motion in the detail it deserves and digest and understand what it means for the officers. I appreciate that there's some cost involved in this sort of detailed analysis, and I'm not really clear on the level of cost involved and not really clear on what dent that might make in our very tightly constrained budget. I'm also not sure that this is necessarily the work that council should be doing. There seems to me to be some level of detail here that the state government and the LXRA, what are they called now? LXRP authority should be taking control of and dedicating resources to. I'd like to see our resources at council being put to the things that residents across the municipality are asking us to do with quite some desperation. And I'm not sure that the analysis of the property or designing visuals or coming up with the engineering solution for this very complicated problem is exactly what our team should be spending their time and resources doing. I also think that we've got to be really clear at the moment about where we want state government to be spending its money, and there's some argument that one of the reasons the airport rail link is potentially possibly on hold is that the blowout of the level crossing removals, which has gone from 60 to now 100 level crossing removals, and we're asking them to take on even more. And that it's because of those pressures that things like the Airport West railway station are now potentially being impacted. And I think we've got to make a decision as a council, and I might go over if, I'm sorry, Mayor, we've got to make a decision as a council where we put our advocacy effort. And at the moment, I think our advocacy effort is best put into fighting for an a train station in Airport West. We've got
Councillor Isa, I'll extend your time by an additional 30 seconds.
Thanks. I'll try to be quicker. We're on a really good footing with that campaign. We've got some excellent resources that we've already prepared that don't need any further expenditure, and I think that that is where our community is expecting our effort to be put at the moment, and I don't want to let them down on that. This is something that's aspirational and it's something I agree with, but it's not where I want to put our limited resources. I want to see members of our western area who are without public transport benefit before improving this situation.
Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm still unsure about this, Mr. Mayor. I'm in two frames of mind, and I've heard both arguments. I agree with Councillor Nation. I also agree with Councillor Isa. They both make very, very good points. But let's face it, Mr. Mayor. What have we got here in Moonee Valley? What have we actually got? And the point that I'm trying to make is, I know we've got limited resources, but if it wasn't for council, we wouldn't get half the things done that we got here. Half the things done. We're not going to get a railway station for a couple of years. That's been made quite clear to us. It's not going to happen. So if we can't get that, and they've told us we're not going to get it, but they're going to tax us more. That's what's going to happen. They're going to tax us more, and we're the highest taxing citizens in Australia, Victoria, the highest taxed people in Victoria. So, you know what? I want both. I want the railway station at Airport West, and I also want the level crossing removals. So, I don't care. I want to advocate for both because I think they're both just as important.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak?
Thank you, ma'am. It's been a really interesting debate. I think that I will be supporting this motion. I think one of the really difficult things is and a lot of the things that Councillor Isa said is kind of triggered because we had the airport station, we had the Keeleree station, it was getting done, 2029, it was ours. The team here worked hard to, ensure it was done. The councils worked hard, the community worked hard. We worked hard for so long and we had it, and it's been ripped from underneath us.
Councillor Sypek.
This motion, a lot of the points that Councillor Isa raised were very valid, but we shouldn't be fighting them anymore. And that's what's really sad about all of this, because we're not getting what we deserve. We're paying the same amount of tax, but we're not getting, I don't think, necessarily our fair share. And I want to add something that's already been discussed tonight, another one in the mix, and that's obviously the North Essendon roundabout. Like, in terms of the big advocacy things that we talk about, yep, the train station, which, as I said, was a tick, but now it's sort of like not so much a tick. This one, it wasn't done a few years ago, another story in the North Essendon roundabout, which is obviously very concerning, and there's been deaths there. So it is really hard for us as a council, because we want to represent the community really well, and these projects, they all need to happen at some point, and they probably all need to happen soon. So I suppose, I don't know, Mayor, I think that the last dot point, was it? No, the second last one. Where are we? The one that says, in the interim prior to the next report coming to council, endorse the continued advocacy for the removal of the 2 level crossings. I think that advocacy does have to continue, because we need to get it done. And at the end of the day, if the state government's major priorities lie more with the level crossings, then at least we might get something done. But it is a really tricky one, and I think that our community overall is really disappointed with the lack of infrastructure spend that we've had in the city of Moonee Valley. I don't think that a lot of the advocacy dollars that we have spent is necessarily fair. There's a lot of councils out there that don't spend any money on advocating for their level crossing removals or their train stations, and they get handed them on a silver platter. We do. That's where your ratepayers' dollars are going. Sorry guys, we know it's important. We wish the government would just do it anyway. Anyway, I suppose they're my thoughts. I'm looking forward to hearing Councillor Nation close to help me confirm my position. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Isa.
Mayor, could I just foreshadow the officer's recommendation? Thanks. Should this motion fail? Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nation, would you like to give right a reply?
Thanks, Mayor. And look, Councillor Isa has argued we've got limited resources. We need to look at where we put our advocacy effort. That is what this is all about. At the moment, we are advocating for these, whether we like it or not. So we as a councillor group need to decide, do we still want to advocate for them or not? If not, if this data and information comes back and we go, that's not something we want to advocate for, then we go and advocate elsewhere. Not to say we can't advocate for multiple things at once, but at the moment, we're just advocating for them without any real foundation of what we're advocating for, the solution, the data to back it up, and so forth. I would also just need to clarify a few things. Councillor Isa did say this alternative came to us late this evening, so it was circulated via email at 3:47 p.m, and at 4:42 I advised people that I was going to come in and sit in this very spot for an hour, which I did, and Councillor Isa, you were here, and Councillor Adams, and there was an hour before even the pre-meet started where I was happy to answer any questions about this. We spent, by my record, 12 minutes in the pre-meet with me answering all questions on this particular motion, and officers even giving an input on the level of cost, which was another point that was raised in Councillor Isa's debate. So I would like to think that I have given a fair opportunity for councillors to ask questions of myself regarding this motion and officers, and I just wanted to clear up that this was not brought to the chambers at 6:59 p.m, which may have been alluded to. And finally, I'd say that we need to do what residents are asking us was said. The actual reason I brought this notice of motion was because I got bailed up by residents. So there's enough of them that were chasing me down to ask me what our position was. I didn't know our exact position other than we're advocating it for, and that's where we're at. So let's actually think about if this is something we want to do. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Nation, Sharp, Sypek, and opposed, Councillor Isa and Councillor Tyson. I declare that motion carried. We'll now welcome back Councillor Bedio and Hodgson, and I understand Councillor Byrne has a conflict on the next item.
Thank you, Mayor. As disclosed at the start of the meeting, I have a conflict in item 9.4, general conflict as previously disclosed to the CEO in writing.
Thank you.
Just needs a bit more time.
Welcome back, councillors. So we now move on to item 9.4, Draft Community Facilities Management Policy. Councillor Isa.
I have a motion.
I'll take a motion when it's called. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative motion, please.
What's your motion?
That Council resolves to endorse the updated Community Facilities Management Policy as Attachment 1 with the following amendments. A, booking priority category 1 on page 8 to read target priority populations in brackets services and groups instead of services supporting target priority populations. B, booking priority category 2 on page 8 to read Moonee Valley Community Groups, /groups instead of Moonee Valley Club/groups. C, definition on page 5 to read Moonee Valley Community Club/group, a not-for-profit community club or group instead of Moonee Valley Club/group, a club or community group. And then point 2, and sorry, that should all be point 1 there. Resolves to, yep, thank you, sorry, point 1. And point 2...
before you continue, sorry, Councillor Isa, governance, also in point C, there's a quotation marks missing. Instead of, I think after instead of. Thank you. Please continue, Councillor Isa.
Thank you. Point 2, seek a report from officers as soon as practicable on how to prioritise the use of pavilions by soccer clubs during summer to support soccer clubs who share their home ground with overflow clubs, then in brackets, i.e. clubs that have a home ground and club rooms elsewhere and use the ground as a secondary/overflow venue. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I might ask you to take point 2 to governance.
They should have it. It was emailed to them at 7:31.
I think they've found it. Can you just confirm what's on the screen in point 2 is what you read out?
Yep, just soccer clubs in the second line just needs to be a small c.
Lowercase c, yeah.
Thanks.
Is that it? Thank you. Are councillors aware of what's been moved?
I just can't see because of the glare, sorry. It's just what's up in the email.
Yep. And councillors aware? Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Hodgson. The first point in this motion is around just fixing some of the language so that the policy aligns with itself, and that the table on page 8 reflects in words the principles that are contained on page 3. So it's a little bit of a technical and semantic amendment there, and I appreciate colleagues talking before prior to the meeting about this and hopefully understanding what, the intention behind those. I'm going to speak to the second point a little bit more at length, and then perhaps the policy itself. Look, point two, there has been some discussion prior to the meeting around a particular aspect of the use of pavilions, which are within the policy. Sporting pavilions do come within the policy. What I've tried to do in point two is address some concerns that were raised by colleagues about how clubs that might not have access to a facility might be able to best use the facility for presentation nights, for summer events, for other events that they might want to hold during summer when the pavilion has been allocated to another club. Now, in some respects, it's a little bit messy because the Community Facilities Management Policy doesn't apply to the sporting allocation policy, which is where some of this is dealt with. But I've tried hard to find a way through the disagreement there. And I hope that in seeking a report from officers to advise us on how to navigate that problem that's of concern to, obviously, soccer clubs and of concern to some councillors around the table, that this finds a way through that. Because I do really appreciate the problem that colleagues have identified. I just don't know that the Community Facilities Management Policy is the place in which we best resolve that particular issue. It's really the seasonal allocation policy or MOU agreements that we might have, or that clubs might have with each other, where we can make sure that clubs are best able to make use of the facilities. So I hope that that compromise makes sense to people. Just to speak really briefly to the consultation or to the policy more generally, and thank all of the people who responded to the consultation. There have been 2 phases of consultation that have been responded to by quite a number of residents who all seem to identify that affordability and the prioritisation of vulnerable groups was a key concern for them. And I think it's a key concern for councillors around the chamber as well, that we do want to make sure that there's fairness in the allocation of our facilities and making sure that they're affordable and there are no barriers to their use. Interestingly, in the second phase of consultation, there were no respondents below 25 years of age, and only 4% were between 25 and 34. So I think we have a bit of a way to go in making sure that we can get the opinions of our younger residents, because facilities like this, our community facilities, are hopefully used by younger members of the community. If they're not, we perhaps need to look into that and understand why there's a bit of a gap of communication there. Some other points that were raised that are quite interesting were that, as well as affordability and availability, maintenance and improvement of facilities was something that was commented on quite a lot in the consultation, as well as the need for language on information and signage to cater for all levels of English. So there were a range of different views that came back through the consultation that hopefully can be acted on. So look, I hope that colleagues appreciate that what I've tried to do in point 2 is find a compromise, and I welcome any questions or debate on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this, and thanks for the amendments to really emphasise some of those new, I don't think the word's definitions, but those categories of target priority populations, and making sure that our community groups are being looked after as a priority. From memory, when this was first called in for review, it was around making sure that we gave priority access to clubs and community groups that were operating out of Moonee Valley, and I think these amendments strengthen that. I'm also happy to support the second dot point, which seeks to resolve or, pursue resolution for a particular issue that's arisen for soccer clubs. And in my mind also supports the attempts that we are making to make sure our multi-purpose pavilions are truly being used to the maximum amount that they can. So for soccer clubs that occupy pavilions where the other clubs using them during summer might not be actually using the pavilions very much, maybe just the change rooms, it makes absolute sense to me that those pavilions continue to be actively used year round, so that our community clubs and groups are getting the best use out of our assets. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Sharp.
I've got an alternative, Mayor.
An amendment?
Yep. Amendment, Mayor.
What's your amendment?
To delete point 2 in its entirety and to add a new point 2, which was previously circulated, but I shall read it out.
Yep.
So point 2 would read, in Appendix 2, dash, priority of access and financial considerations, semicolon, point 1, booking priority, comma, includes an extra point under the Moonee Valley Clubs Groups category, which states, soccer clubs who share their home ground with overflow clubs, in brackets, i.e. clubs that have a home ground and club rooms elsewhere and use the ground as a secondary/overflow venue, end brackets, shall have first right of access and priority use of the pavilion during both summer and winter seasons, should the soccer club apply to use the pavilion. Full stop. Change rooms are to remain available for use by the overflow club. And add a point 3. Ensure...
Just a second, Councillor
sorry,
Sharp, just for governance to catch up, sorry. Yep, go ahead. Councillor Sharp, do you want to continue? Sorry, your point 3.
Yep, point 3. Ensure this community facilities management policy is read in conjunction with the seasonal sports allocation policy when allocating pavilion access.
Just taking some time for governance to catch up to you, Councillor Sharp.
That's all right.
Councillor Sharp, can I just confirm in point 2 whether after booking priority you read out includes an extra point or to include an extra point?
Booking priority includes an extra point under the Moonee Valley Clubs - Groups category. It's the same thing.
Not to include?
It's the same.
It's the same thing. In Appendix 2, priority of access and financial considerations, point 1, booking priority, includes an extra point under the Moonee Valley Clubs - Groups category, which states. So I've pointed out the Appendix 2 and the points, and the section booking priority includes an extra point under the Moonee Valley Clubs Group category, which is contained in the booking priority.
Thank you. Councillors, can I get an acknowledgement that they're aware of what's been moved?
Yep.
Councillors Adams, Bedio, Hodgson?
Yep.
Yeah? Is there a seconder? Councillor Nation? Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. I will try and be quick, but obviously I've got a lot of things to cover. But basically, we're endorsing the draft community facilities management policy. Our pavilions are community facilities, hence this motion regarding pavilion use through this policy. I have done my due diligence today to make sure that this policy, that this alternative could be implemented, and hence the wording we have before us. Basically, the wording relates to soccer clubs, because this is an issue that hasn't gone away, and I've been speaking about it for quite a while, and I was of the understanding that it was fixed last year within our previous the seasonal sports and allocation policy. However, as sometimes happens, you find out that things don't actually follow, or certain items might not be followed through properly, and as such, apparently it's been a wishy-washy requirement to enforce. Hence, I have spelt it out categorically here in front of us, because soccer clubs do not have homes. They are the one code in our municipality that do not have a home. Every other sport that is housed within Moonee Valley has a home. Every club has access to their own pavilion. The soccer clubs do not. However, there are a number of soccer clubs that share their grounds with overflow clubs. So the overflow clubs have their own home ground, they have their own club rooms, and they very often they don't actually use the pavilions, but aside from that, they have access because it is in our seasonal sports and allocation policy currently that they can. So this request, or this amendment, purely tries to solve the issue of soccer at the moment not having homes, because they do not. And I would hope that councillors could see that as pretty much being as plain as day as what is written there. There's nothing untoward. When you have a club that already has their home ground somewhere else and club room somewhere else, and you're allowing them access to another pavilion when that home tenant of that pavilion can't have access, it doesn't seem quite fair. It doesn't really pass the pub test, and I have been banging on this quite a lot over the years and was of the understanding that this had been fixed last year. So, alas, I have to bring this motion up to us tonight in order to get the outcome that I was of the understanding that we all sought last year. So it is not to displace anyone. It is not to cause issues amongst groups, because at the end of the day, the overflow clubs have their own home ground and have their pavilions. We have to start acknowledging soccer is a code that is not a pop-up sport. It is longer than 6 months, we have baseball, we have hockey, we have tennis, we have bowls, we have every other sport under the sun in this municipality, and every other sport under the sun can access their pavilion as they need to and as they see fit. We have an anomaly at the moment, which I really do hope we can fix, because the issue won't go away. Soccer needs to be recognised by this council as a sport that is growing, and we need to really start actioning the soccer strategy, A, and B, we need to start putting our money where our mouths are and not fluffing around and going to events and saying, yeah, we support you, without actually doing anything to support them. All they are asking for is a home. That's the crux of it. There's nothing more to it. When every other club has a home, it's very hard to argue against enabling the soccer clubs to have a home. Now, this point does say, should they apply to use a pavilion? Because a pavilion isn't free.
Councillor Sharp, your time has expired.
30 seconds more, please.
Yep, I'll allow it.
So this request, it states in there, if they apply, because pavilions are charged for. So obviously it's up to the soccer club to apply if they would like to use a pavilion, but they should be given the first right of access as it is their home ground. And in the situations that are described there, they are the only club that is home to that ground and hence should be able to access the pavilion. It's pretty simple.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And look, I would have been happy to support the original point too, if we probably weren't this far done in the piece. So I appreciate the intent of the original point too, which this amendment goes to strike out. But we're probably, more than 3/4 through this term. We've been talking about soccer allocations, facilities, since we all were elected onto this council, and therefore receiving a report to then look at how it could work in the future is probably we're probably past that point now, particularly when we're looking at this policy and implementing this policy tonight. To me, the difference of this amendment is this will now put this into this policy, so we don't have to, I guess, keep waiting for another report, then waiting to see how the report comes back and then how we can implement it into existing policies. So for me, this is the right time to make this change, and therefore I'm very happy to support this amendment. I would point out that in a lot of municipalities that there isn't this issue, because in a lot of municipalities soccer is treated like your tennis, your baseball, your hockey, because they actually play on rectangular pitches. Our soccer clubs play on rectangular pitches that are sort of retrofitted onto cricket and footy Aussie rules grounds, because we don't have any real dedicated rectangular spaces for soccer. So in other municipalities, this isn't necessarily an issue, because cricket doesn't come on and play on a rectangular soccer pitch during summer. That's just not practical. Because we don't have those dedicated rectangular pitches throughout our municipality, and they're just overlaid onto traditionally oval pitches, then we're faced with this problem that anywhere soccer plays, you could call it a cricket ground or an Aussie rules ground, because there is that versatility. So in my view, ideally you'd just have soccer in with baseball, tennis, hockey, a facility that they use year round for that specific purpose, because of the specific needs and specific dimensions. That would be the excellent outcome that I think would be fair and equitable. We're not there yet. If we get there, I don't know. So in the interim, is there a way that we can actually enable that to happen, particularly at grounds where it might be club's second or third overflow ground? Well, here's the solution. So I thank Councillor Sharp for raising this, and I'd say to councillors, we need to implement it into the policy. It is something that is relevant to the policy. It's got the reference to the sports allocation policy as referenced by officers. And
Councillor
I
Nation,
think,
your
the
time
time
has
is now.
expired.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Mayor.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I won't be able to support this, particularly the striking out of the current point 2, which is gone from the screen, but that's okay. I've got it in front of me, which seeks a sort of longer term and hopefully neater solution to the issue, because I agree with all of the comments that have been made by my colleagues about the issue that we're trying to fix here. I have a couple of problems or concerns about trying to put this amendment into the Community Facilities Management Policy, where seasonal allocations are outside of scope according to the policy. So my memory of it, and I could be corrected because my brain has been a little bit patchy lately, is that the issue that was resolved, or the way that we believed we would resolve the issue, was through the seasonal allocation policy last year. And that's where I think it would be the best to try and fix the issue. The policy has gone out to consultation twice. I do have a concern about making a change at this stage and that becoming final without, it being flagged as a difference that we might have been going to make. And it will stand in the policy as the final if we endorse the policy tonight. The amendment, as I read it, currently doesn't apply to the seasonal allocation hours because that's out of scope with the Community Facilities Management Policy. So it would allow soccer clubs to apply for and have first right of access and priority to using the pavilion during non-seasonal allocated hours.
Point of clarification, point of order, Mayor. Actually, that is...
Your point of order, Councillor Sharp.
Point of order is... it's derogatory and it is not the intention
Under
of
what
the meeting.
point of order? Sorry, what rule? Number?
45.1, it's speculation, it's derogatory, and it's not the intention of the motion.
What phrase?
That this motion will allow sporting clubs access out of their seasonal allocation, out of their normal sporting club hours, was what was just stated, and that is purely conjecture, purely incorrect, and purely derogatory.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Hodgson, I might ask whether you said that and whether you have a response to me of the point of order.
Yep.
Before I make my mind.
So I was making a statement about how I believe the amendment interacts with the scope of the policy.
Thank you. On the point of order, I don't find it derogatory. Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Hodgson, please continue.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I was going to go on to say that I appreciate that point 3 of the amendment may be seeking to kind of resolve that issue of making sure that the seasonal allocation policy may also refer to the hierarchy of the booking priorities in this. But as I say, the original point 2, which has been struck out from this motion, I believe seeks to address the issue in a way that I think allows us to look at this a bit more neatly and hopefully resolve the problem that soccer clubs are facing in Moonee Valley. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Before I ask for the next councillor, I might just ask staff whether they could check whether the air conditioning has turned off in the chamber. It's hot. That's good. Apologies if I said Councillor Sharp. I addressed you as Councillor Sharp, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment?
Mr Mayor, point of clarification, Rule 44.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, the wording that Councillor Sharp has put in her alternative, has this been run past the officers, and does it contradict any policies that we have right now, Councillor Sharp?
I might ask, I know the CEO just left the room for a second. Maybe, Councillor Sypek, could you repeat your point of clarification?
The wording that Councillor Sharp has put in her alternative, has this been run past the officers, and does this contravene any current policies that we have, or will it cause any sort of confusion?
I might say on the second half of the question, potentially it might be opinion, but the first half, CEO, is yourself or an officer in a position to respond?
I'm aware that Councillor Sharp has spoken to a couple of officers. I'm not aware of the content of the discussion, and I wouldn't want to get involved in the debate. Neither do I want officers to be joining the debate. Thank you.
So it's been run past...
Do you have an additional point of clarification?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's been run past the relevant officers, and they've...
I'm not aware of that advice. I'm sorry. I'm not privy to that advice given. Thank you.
All right. So then...
Are you speaking to the motion?
I'd like to also put in an alternative, Mr Mayor.
An alternative to...
The alternative.
So we're currently debating the amendment, so amendments can be moved after.
Okay, so I'll do an amendment to the alternative.
You're not allowed to move an amendment on an amendment, Councillor Sypek, so we'll deal with this amendment first and then can come back to you. Okay. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I can appreciate both sides of the debate in this amendment. I can see the important need to support our soccer clubs to ensure that they have a home base, and that's something that Councillor Sharp has spoken of quite a lot over the last couple of years. It's something I do agree with, and I'm disappointed that we're still not there. So I can see the need to ensure that we get that happening quickly. I'm also conscious that we've only recently approved or endorsed the seasonal sport allocation policy recently, and therefore it's not likely to come back to chambers for further endorsement in the near future unless we call for it. And so obviously I know I can't put an amendment to an amendment, but thinking that if this amendment was to be supported, I would probably, and I would look to be supporting this amendment at this point, but I would look to put a further amendment in place that would call for that will amend the next review date on this community facilities management policy to be to change it from the 21st October 2025 to 21st October 2025, or within 3 months after the review of the seasonal sport allocation policy. I'll then call to request that the seasonal sport allocation policy be brought to council for review within the next 3 months, and to address them.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio, but we are debating this amendment at the moment, so
it goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand with my debate, because I'm saying that I would support this amendment. But my intention would be to councillors around the room who might be concerned that might be some inconsistencies, that I would look to put an amendment forward that will, I hope, bridge the gap in those inconsistencies and allow for what's potentially seen as being an untidy policy to be able to be cleaned up in the short term, so that we can deliver on the important points that Councillor Sharp has mentioned, but allow the policies to come back to be tidied up, and so that they can be put into the relevant policies in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to foreshadow an alternative if this doesn't get up, so I can put my amendment to the alternative.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. I'll have to confer with governance whether an amendment can be
just foreshadowing.
Yep. Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I really appreciate the real desire to resolve this problem, and I think that there's no one in the chamber tonight who doesn't want to see a resolution to this. It's about how we do it. And I think that the motion that's before us at the moment is incredibly problematic and creates a real issue for clubs who are allocated pavilions under the seasonal allocation policy that we have in place for summer. Because the wording of this amendment then allows a soccer club who has used that pavilion for their winter season to have right of access, to have priority of access over the pavilion, regardless of the seasonal allocation that's been given to a summer club. So a cricket club might have been given a pavilion, whether it's the Flemington Hub, whether it's the Gerring Flemington Hub, whether it's Strathnaver, whether it's Cross Keys. There are a number of grounds that have soccer during winter and then have cricket during summer. And the seasonal allocation policy is in place to provide certainty for those teams for the use of the pavilion during their summer sports. And what the wording of this amendment does is override that with the soccer club's right to access the pavilion whenever they want, because it doesn't have any clarity around when that might be, regardless of how the cricket team or the summer team might be wanting to use it. Now, we haven't sought any feedback on this over the 2 sessions of periods of consultation with the cricket clubs. So the cricket clubs should be rightly perplexed as to why at this last minute we would be seeking to put in place a prioritisation over their seasonal allocation, which is under a completely different policy, which is out of the scope of this policy, and allow this policy to somehow negate their seasonal allocation. Now, I know that this issue needs resolution and that we've tried a number of ways to seek MOUs or to look through the seasonal allocation policy to help this be resolved. And I think that that is absolutely resolvable, and hence seeking a report as soon as possible to help us resolve it. But it is resolvable through the seasonal allocation policy. Doing it this way overrides other teams' rights without giving them a fair right of reply, which is contravening our governance framework, point 2 in decision making. It contravenes our governance rules because this amendment is not even relevant, it's not relevant to the scope of this policy. I can just implore colleagues to look for the sensible compromise to allow us to deal with this responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I had similar concerns to Councillor Isa with regards to the seasonal allocations, but it does say in the amendment that it is specific to clubs that have an overflow. So I guess I just wanted to seek a point of clarification, please, through you, Chair, to clarify that.
What rule is that?
Point of clarification.
What rule is that?
Councillor Sypek, please don't interject.
It's rule
Councillor
44,
Adams.
isn't it? What do I have to say?
So my point of clarification, Mayor, is... sorry, I've lost my train of thought now.
All right, please take your time.
It was to clarify that that it is the overflow of clubs that this will impact, and that it is not the clubs that seasonally allocated these pavilions. Yeah.
Sorry, once more, Councillor Adams. Apologies.
Really?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So my point of clarification is to clarify that this particular amendment applies to clubs that share a home ground with overflow clubs, and not those that have been seasonally allocated, as Councillor Isa suggested
through the seasonal allocation policy. Thank you.
Thank you. CEO, do you or your officers feel in a position to be able to respond?
I'm sorry, the officer's not in a position to respond. Excuse me, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Adams.
My understanding of this...
Sorry, are you speaking to
Yes,
the
I am,
amendment?
to the amendment, yep. So my understanding of this amendment is that it just applies to overflow clubs. There aren't many in our municipality, I think, that that do share with, overflow clubs. And so I guess, I agree that it's probably not in line with the policy, but I'm happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Sharp, would you like to close?
Well, I can't. I don't.
No, put to vote.
I want to say something.
Oh, sorry, Councillor... Oh, yes, Councillor Sypek, sorry, you just asked a point of clarification, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Apologies.
I totally agree with what Councillor Ava Adams said. I had exactly the same concerns, and I think she's right on the money here, Mr Mayor. It only applies to the overflow clubs, and most of the time, if you actually go there, because I've actually gone to some of these places during cricket season, and the pavilions are actually empty, and they only need to use the change rooms and the toilets, but the pavilions upstairs remain empty. And this just allows, the crossover times in October and in March when they have the crossover times. It allows for that, not that hard changeover every 6 months. This allows that flexibility to go hand in hand. But I also believe what Councillor Isa said makes a lot of sense too. So I think to progress this way forward, the wording that we've got right now, I think should give us a way forward, and hopefully we can come to an amicable conclusion for everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sharp, would you like to close?
No, it's put to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I'll put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? It is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Nation, Sharp, Sypek, Tyson, and those against? Councillor Isa and Hodgson. I declare that amendment carried to form part of the substantive motion. We now return to that where Councillor Isa and Councillor Hodgson had spoken. Councillor Sharp, you had the call, but you moved an amendment. Did you want to speak to the substantive motion?
No, I don't need to, thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that to the vote.
Could you split the vote, please?
Request to split the vote. I'll consider it.
If not, I'll seek to withdraw the motion. Thanks.
I'm happy to split the motion into 1 and 2 and 3 together. So we'll have 2 separate votes. I'll first vote on point 1, A, B and C. It's all together. Are councillors aware of what's being... Yes? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. I'll now put 2 and 3 to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Bedio, Nation, Sharp, Sypek, Tyson, and those against? Councillor Hodson, Councillor Isa. I declare that motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now ask Councillor Byrne to return to the meeting. Welcome back, Councillor Byrne. We're now on to item 9.5, response to notice of motion number 2023/10, State Government Curbside Recycling Reforms and FOGO Service Expansion. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation, Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
This is a really exciting motion. This is about making sure everyone in our municipality who lives in single unit or semi-detached dwelling has access to food organic and garden organic waste collection. It comes at considerable cost, but I'm really hoping that everyone around the chamber's excited about putting the money towards this. People might be aware that the state government's put in place a rollout of making sure that everyone across the state has access to glass recycling and what's become known as FOGO, which is the food organic and garden organics. And so what Moonee Valley is deciding, hopefully tonight, to do is to progress the FOGO side of that. I can see most of my colleagues are on their phones at the moment, so I hope someone's listening to the debate about this really exciting progress that we're making tonight. Those of us who have green bins know that the value of being able to put our food waste in the green bins. What people may or may not be aware of is what this means for our greenhouse gas emissions, and that the over 2,000, I think it's about 2,500 tonnes of FOGO waste that we're able to divert by making green bins available to everyone brings down our greenhouse gas emission tonnes by an equivalence of just over 2,000 tonnes. So it does make an important contribution to our greenhouse gas reduction. It also means that people will, in their rates notices, no longer see that opt-in cost for the green bins. And we're looking at ways of, I guess, equalising the costs across the municipality so that our 51,000 households that have access to green bins those costs will be shared amongst all users. Look, I'm really sorry, but there is talking going on. I know that people are, maybe less interested in rubbish than some of us, but I'd appreciate, Mayor, if people could pay attention, please.
I didn't hear, but I will ask councillors to be respectful at all times. Councillor Isa, please continue. Councillor Isa, please continue.
My concern was that people were talking.
Thank you.
Thanks. There's been a couple of trials before.
Councillor Isa, please continue.
There's been a couple of trials in the process of reaching this point. And some of those trials have been the use of caddies, whether or not to have caddies with liners or without liners. Some municipalities make use of liners because that can help the smell to be reduced. The trial has shown, in fact, that it's perhaps less contamination for Moonee Valley if we don't use
Sorry,
line.
Sorry, just a point of clarification. Can I seek an
point of
adjournment, please?
clarification.
Can I seek an adjournment because the councillor has obviously left in distress?
Councillor Nation, that isn't a point of clarification. However,
Can I ask the chair?
However, I will call a 10-minute adjournment, returning at 9:02. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I will now ask Councillor Isa to resume.
There's plenty more to say on the topic, but because of the lack of interest around the room, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I agree with Councillor Isa. This is a really exciting policy, and I am looking forward to hopefully support around the chamber to have this implemented. It does mean...
Sorry, Mayor. Can I please call a point of order on, in accordance with Governance Rule 28? Obviously, I don't like to do this, but I think that comment was a little bit out of line to say...
Sorry, Rule 28.
Yep. Just the comment that there is an interest around the room in FOGO, I believe, is defamatory on other councillors, because I know that's not true, and that's casting aspersions on councillors. That's...
Councillor Bedio, you're referring to any motion which is determined by the chair.
Sorry?
Did you want to correct which you were referring to?
Sorry, yes. Governance Rule 3.1.1-3.1.4, making comments that are defamatory, malicious, abusive or offensive.
Sorry,
3.1.1-3.1.4.
Sorry, Councillor Bedio, can you repeat? What, 33?
3.1.
3.1, sorry.
3.1, sorry, yep.
Thank you. 3.1.
Sorry,
Yep.
it's just the rules are hyphenated here, so
No,
I
that's
don't know
all right.
what specific rule, but
Sure.
making comments that are defamatory, malicious, abusive or offensive. I don't believe that it's warranted to say that councillors are uninterested in the subject.
It's fine, Mayor. I withdraw the
Sorry,
comment.
Councillor Isa. Councillor Bedio, I won't uphold that it's defamatory, malicious, abusive or offensive, but I probably do agree in a respectful working relationship of council that I might ask Councillor Isa to withdraw her remarks.
I withdraw my remarks, Mayor, but I would also like to call a point of order under clause...
Sorry, point of order.
55.7.
Point of order
I'm calling a
45.1, based on the withdrawal. 45.1, a councillor required by the chair to withdraw a remark or apology must do so immediately without qualification or explanation.
Not a qualification,
Thank you,
Councillor Nation.
Councillor
I'm calling a
Nation.
point of order.
Councillor Isa.
Before we move on to that,
No.
did you uphold or withdraw?
He said he
Stop.
upheld it.
Councillors.
Just not yell at me.
Councillors.
Always ask that. He said he upheld it.
Didn't hear. I was
Councillors.
asking.
Councillor Isa, I'll ask you to withdraw the previous remarks before you move another point of order.
I did withdraw. I withdrew twice, Mayor. I withdrew without you asking.
Thank you, Councillor Isa.
I would like to move a point of order, please.
What is your point of order?
My point of order is under clause 55.7 that the chair must not accept an act of disorder. There was laughter across the room from me, from the opposite side of the chamber, when I was speaking, and it happened twice. And I would like to ask that there be an apology for that laughter, please.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I did not witness laughter. If any councillor would like to mention that, whether it occurred or not, otherwise I'll have to move on and not uphold that point of order. Councillor Hodgson, you had the call.
Thank you,
Councillor
Mayor.
Nation.
This item comes to us in response to a notice of motion that I believe Councillor Sypek raised, and in debate in that notice of motion, I think he rightly pointed out that there would be a lot of members of our community who are not necessarily fully understanding of the importance of, oh, sorry, I shouldn't say that, aren't clear on the processes of how FOGO will work or the implications, and I think that is demonstrated in the results of the second trial that was undertaken, which was where council selected households. They didn't self-nominate, and the results of that one were that people weren't as willing to participate in the surveys and provide their feedback on their experience. So I think what that demonstrates is, to Councillor Sypek's original point in moving the notice of motion, that this is a really big piece of community engagement that we have to do. So I'm particularly happy to support point C of the recommendation, which is to ensure that our expansion program is supported with thorough, targeted and ongoing focus on community engagement and comms and education, so that we can ensure that there's a success across, and that we don't get those increased amounts of contamination. So one of the things Councillor Isa was discussing was including provision of kitchen caddies and whether or not they have a liner. I know that some, in different municipalities, different waste collectors will find that liners are or aren't contamination. So there's a lot of information that we need to share with our community to make sure that we don't see a rise in contamination in our FOGO as we roll out a universal service. I think it's particularly important that we do this for the implications that it has on our emissions that are created by organics going to landfill. And so I'm excited to see this one, as I said, I think before an adjournment, that hopefully gets support around the chamber tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, this is really exciting, so don't at home get any ideas that we're not really excited and keen about this. And I think it may be Councillor Sypek that raised an initial notice of motion. He might speak to that a little bit further. But waste is something that we do very well at Moonee Valley. FOGO is something we do very well. I think we were the first metropolitan council to have the kitchen waste in our green bin. So. Quite the contrary of not being interested. This is our bread and butter, but we have to keep obviously expanding what we do and offering our FOGO services to everyone throughout the municipality. Now, the report does pick up there is a cost, and it's quite a substantial cost. What I would say to residents as well, your waste charges on your rates are like some of the best bang for buck you can get, and for 200 a bit a year, you get 3 bins collected, 2 of them fortnightly, 1 every week. There's not many services that you could pay that amount of money, just $250, and get that weekly or fortnightly service plus all the street cleaning, etc. So there is a cost, and council does pass on some of that cost to ratepayers, but it's still an extremely valuable service, but B, extremely important for the environment as well. Look, some small issues I probably had with the consultation, particularly when it came to the bin collection. It was a FOGO FOGO questionnaire. Quite extensive, but one of the questions was, would you prefer weekly landfill and fortnightly FOGO, or would you prefer fortnightly landfill and weekly FOGO? But there wasn't an option there to say fortnightly and fortnightly or weekly and weekly. And I do think that the results for that particular question, I think it was 44%, 38%, probably would be a little bit skewed. I would like to understand if there would be more supporting the weekly FOGO if it didn't have fortnightly landfill. I definitely think that skewed the result. What the right option is, I don't know. But look, this is something I think we're all excited about. For those watching at home, unfortunately our Docs on Tap, our further information pack isn't working on our computers, so some of us are using our phones. I also know a lot of you are in touch at Councillor Cam on Instagram, and I've talked to plenty of people during the meeting who are sending me their advice on level crossings, FOGO.
keep debate relevant. Please continue.
I was just, the last word was FOGO.
And level crossings. Please continue.
Okay. Let's have a FOGO at the level crossing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. And I agree with Councillor Nation. This is a really exciting program, and I'm really excited actually that it's being expanded to our single unit and semi-detached dwellings, because a lot of households have missed out on FOGO collection, and so this is extremely exciting to expand the program, and I'm hoping that we can further expand it to other households in the municipality that miss out on FOGO collection. So really happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Bedio.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Something I'm very excited about, and something that I think is a really fantastic opportunity for council. Sorry, I'm just trying to find these results, but through some benchmarking that our officers have done, it's found that a number of councils have reduced their wastes to landfill by 25 and 32% respectively following the introduction of weekly FOGO. I do note, however, in particular in my ward of Murnong, quite a lot of the constituents, or my constituents in this ward, live in high-rise developments. Those individuals don't have access to curbside collection and therefore don't have the opportunity to use our FOGO service. Many of those private multi-storey developments have private contractors that operate and collect their rubbish. So I do just want to add a slight amendment to this if I can, Mayor. And
what's your amendment?
So it's just an additional point E. Just to request a report to be brought back to council, stipulating, sorry Mayor, let me just put this together. Request a report back to council, providing options for increasing FOGO usage into dwellings or apartment buildings that are not part of the curbside collection process.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Look, as I was saying, this program is only available to those in single detached or in ground level dwellings who utilise our curbside collection. As you can see, with a lot of our developments, particularly Moonee Ponds, a lot of those in our community live in apartment towers and the like who utilise private contractors. A lot of those only have, for example, waste chutes, which either have a recyclable or a landfill option, and therefore they don't have a composting or a FOGO option available to them at current. So I'm not sure if it's possible, and I'm not wanting to set a date because I'm not wanting to put some undue constraints on officers, but it would be good at some point if we could have a report on how we could potentially increase this service to those that are currently in a private contractual arrangement. Whether that potentially might look like a potential planning scheme amendment to change our waste management practices or how waste management plans need to look for planning permit applications, I'm really open, so I thought I'd keep this open. I don't want to set a timeline because it might be a big body of work, but I think it is something that's really important considering more and more people who live in this municipality or moving into this municipality won't be moving into your standard detached housing, they'll be moving into apartment buildings. So thought it would be a really good piece of information that we could have in the future that could help us improve this service.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. And I was very proud to put this up as a notice of motion about waste. And if you have a look at waste holistically in Moonee Valley, it's a bigger issue than everyone thinks it is. Don't just look at surveys. look at when you go out into the public and people talk to you. Two things that people talk to you about a lot of the times is usually the waste, the rubbish collections, and parking. They're the two main things that people talk to me quite often about. And I remember when I first got into council, we had a fortnightly landfill with a 240 litre bins. There was no 120 litre bins back there. And they were being picked up fortnightly, and it was driving people crazy. And when we got in, the first year that I got in, we changed it to a weekly pickup, a 240 litre. And it just worked. It just worked perfectly. And eventually, we educated our community to reduce it from a 240 to a 120, and we started recycling well. And I think here in Moonee Valley, we've got it actually perfect right now. And I'm glad to see that we're going to keep the red bin, the landfill, being collected once a week. And if we can recycle everything else, fantastic. But as long as we keep the red bin being collected once a week, it's perfect, absolutely perfect. And I think we've got it virtually spot on right now. And as you can see, by one council had to reverse and go back to a weekly pickup with the landfill from a fortnightly, because they had massive contamination because people just didn't have the room anymore after 2 weeks in a 120 litre bin. Now, if you want to go back to a 240 litre bin and do it fortnightly, might be an option. I don't think so. I'd rather have a 125 litre and collect it every single week. So I think our officers have done a great job here. I must commend our officers for coming up with this idea, and hopefully we keep it the 1 week for the landfill and we recycle everything else on a fortnightly basis. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Nation.
Yes, and thanks, Councillor Bedio, for bringing this amendment, because it is probably that one area of our municipality where there can be significant improvement in green waste recycling, particularly kitchen recycling, but there's not necessarily the capacity to do it in large developments. Look, even in say the six flat strata I used to live in Athol Street in Moonee Ponds, where we only had red and yellow, and even the yellow got an odour because it was a shared one. So the challenges that you face in a larger scale apartment living with normal waste and odours and problems, let alone green waste and kitchen waste, which would be predominantly what would be going into those green bins. So the idea of looking if we can use the caddy system to give them an option where we can help facilitate that initial part in the green waste collection, and then look for how we can put the onus back on developers or body corps to look at green waste collection. And it's not an easy thing at all for large apartment buildings, but I think even just that caddy process is a good start to start the discussion, because people will do things if you make it easy, but you do need to make it easy for them, particularly when you're trying to change habits. And I do think that is one part of the municipality that is definitely very untapped. And it's not an easy solution, but let's see if we can be leaders again and solve it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm in support of this. I'm trying to find the words because I believe there was maybe a notice of motion recently around this, or perhaps it was about increasing options for recycling for people in high density living. Along the same lines, Councillor Bedio, and just to make the point that if work's being done on that, perhaps this can be rolled into the same report. But it would be great to see what kind of community composting or other, options might be available, even short term, before we have any longer term outcomes around planning scheme amendments.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? I will call a 5-minute adjournment just to give an opportunity for all councillors to have a chance to vote. So we will return at 9:31. And welcome back. We are currently on response to notice of motion number 2023/10, State Government Curbside Recycling Reforms and FOGO Service Expansion. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment that has been moved for point E? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. We now return to the substantive motion, and Councillor Bedio, you had the call.
Look, nothing further to add. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We now move on to 9.6, endorsement of the proposed name Chris Lane Field. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Nation.
Happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I will just briefly. Obviously, I did speak to this when it came before us last, and just gave a brief history of why we as a council had resolved to put out the name Chris Lane Field, and a little bit about Chris's life, a very short life, and why this is an apt name to name our junior baseball facility at Boeing Reserve Oval number 4. And I am overwhelmed, and it's so heartwarming to see that of 378 responses, 365 were in support to rename the Oval Chris Lane Field. That's 97%, and there'd be probably no consultations in my 11 years on council that there has ever been such a large percentage in support of something. There may even be some of that 3% just people accidentally clicking the wrong button, as we do from time to time. So look, I'm really proud as a council that we are giving, should this motion pass, the honour and memory of Chris Lane what it deserves. Obviously, him still being here today in his young 30s would have been an even better outcome, but that's not the case, and this is just an extremely small way that we as a council can commemorate someone who would have had no doubt such an incredible sporting career in a sport that isn't overly played by Australians, and he was good enough to mix it in the MLB and the MLB junior program. So, councillors, I would commend this recommendation to you, and I think this has been a build and a project that has taken a considerable amount of time, but I think this is a very heartwarming conclusion, and really look forward to us hopefully endorsing this, lodging the name with Geographic Names Victoria, it being gazetted, and then hopefully our next generation of baseballers in the city of Moonee Valley that maybe will one day wish to play in the ABL or even the MLB can say that they started their career at Chris Lane Field, and that way his memory continues to live on a lot more than a plaque or a statue or anything of that sort. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Sharp.
It is great to see that the Chris Lane Field will be endorsed by this council, and I concur with Councillor Nation's comments. It's an extremely sensitive issue for many still after this time, and I'm quite sure Chris's family will be extremely happy to actually see the field named after him. I think it's a very important final piece of the puzzle, really, considering we're building the junior baseball field, Chris Lane Field, and everything else that we're doing up there. I think this is a very fitting final piece of the puzzle and a very fitting tribute, and certainly happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 9.7 is review of governance rules and election period policy. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move the officer's recommendation with some additions to point A that read, So I'll just read the whole of point
Yes,
A.
thank you.
Endorse the draft amended governance rules and incorporated election period policy provided as attachment 1 for community engagement, with an amendment to Rule 31.3 to read as follows. 31.3, after the right of reply has been taken, the motion must immediately be put to the vote without any further discussion or debate or points of clarification, other than to inquire as to the correct motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. And the rest to remain the same?
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
you.
Is there a seconder? Is there a Councillor Isa? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. These governance rules and incorporated election period policy coming back to us, they came to us a little while ago because there was a need with some updates to the Act, I think, to include how we do hybrid meeting or remote meeting procedures into our governance rules. And at the time, we identified a couple of other things that govern the way that our meetings operate that might use a little bit of amending. So we requested officers to take another look. They've done that, and they've brought back to us some amendments to make things a bit clearer, to assist in the way that we are operating as a council, and it's a really important set of rules. I won't go through all of the changes that have been made, but they essentially, one of the things that has been changed is to amend the way that we accept petitions to allow a motion, and we've seen a couple of petitions in the last couple of weeks. And another set of changes relate to events like tonight, which we're meeting on a Thursday, unlike our usual Tuesday, and so a lot of our governance rules required particular number of days notice for submitting notices of motion or publishing the agenda and things. They were referred to as days of the week, and they're now more conveniently named as how many days prior to the event occurring, because as tonight demonstrates, we don't always meet on a Tuesday, although we very usually do. My amendment, there was an addition to Rule 31.3 about whether any conversation can take place after a right of reply, and I think rightly, after a right of reply, no further debate should occur and no further discussion. A point of clarification, there was an instance in a meeting where after a right of reply, a councillor needed some clarification on what exactly was being voted on, and I think from a good governance perspective, it's important that a point of clarification like that is allowed to be asked. But other points of clarification that, you know, could be seen as further discussion or debate, particularly after the right of reply is concluded, I think it's appropriate that they remain not allowed. So I put forward this further amendment for colleagues' consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion? No? Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Nation.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this and for it to go out as a draft. But I think based on tonight, probably we need to do some more work. And so I may foreshadow a motion just to refer this back to a councillor briefing, because I'm not sure if our governance rules, as they are with the changes that are made, really do facilitate a good meeting. So, yeah, I don't know if it's worth putting the draft back out, this draft out, and getting feedback and then having to refer it anyway. I've got some other points that I know have been raised earlier about electronic meetings, and also a few things about use of the audio-visual equipment in a meeting, etc., which is a bit outdated now that there's phones. So, yeah, I just happy to support this, but probably based on the past hour, we'll foreshadow referring it back for further work. I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put Councillor Byrne.
Thanks. Yeah, look, I've got a couple of changes that I thought, but I think Councillor Nation's probably hit the nail on the head. Like, I obviously had a conflict for one item. I don't know what happened in that space. But yeah, there's been a fair bit of, it's really quite upsetting, to be honest. So obviously the governance rules aren't being adhered to or used or whatever. I did have a point of clarification.
Sorry, Councillor Byrne, could you clarify that point? Are you making reflections on the chair? The governance rules aren't being followed?
What, that the governance rules wasn't followed?
You said that
There
the
was
governance
disorder in
rules
the-
haven't been followed.
There was disorder in the meeting before, I thought. And no, it
Please
wasn't
continue.
appropriate to
Please
call
continue.
a point of order because it would have just created more disorder, so I didn't. Is that okay?
Please continue.
And there's also on page 25, 32.1, it doesn't read right on my screen. I'm not sure if it reads right on everyone else's screen. I don't know if the document hasn't been proofread properly. So I think that error needs to be fixed. And the other couple of things that I don't particularly agree with is any form of captain's calls of Mayor and CEO moving meeting times. I think it would be better for that to happen in extenuating circumstances. I'm okay with it like that, but not for another reason, I don't think. And also, whilst there's not many people in the chamber tonight, I actually think that it could be really advantageous to allow people to take photos or videos whilst we're in the chamber. It might increase transparency about what goes on in here, or it might increase people's appetite to get involved with council more, which I think is something really important. So they would have been the things that I would have liked to have worked through. I obviously did sort of send them through, but didn't gain a lot of traction. So I might, it's not really a great meeting for decision making from the sound of things, so I might just leave it there.
Councillor Byrne, I will give you a warning for that comment. This is not a great meeting for governing. I don't require a response. Thanks. Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek. I declare that motion lost. I will now ask Councillor Nation, who foreshadowed a motion.
Just ask a point of clarification. If I don't move a motion, may another councillor move a motion?
It would lapse. The report would lapse, I believe, Councillor Nation.
I'll move a motion. The council resolves to refer the governance rules and incorporate election policy back to a councillor briefing for further work. Did I get the name of that right? Governance rules and election period policy, sorry. Refer the governance rules and incorporated election period policy.
So I'll just ask you to read it out again.
The council governance. The council resolves to refer the governance rules and incorporated election period policy back to a councillor briefing for further work.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Is there a seconder?
Councillor Byrne. Councillor Nation.
Yeah, well, if I was on the fence beforehand about whether or not supporting it, that last interaction probably confirms it, because I'm not sure that our governance rules really... I'm unsure... sorry, let me rephrase that. I'm probably uncomfortable with the idea of a councillor addressing the meeting and that councillor being interrupted to be asked, what do you mean by that? I'm not comfortable with that if that is permitted in the rules. I'm not sure about the warning process, if that's in the rules, or what it means. Councillor Byrne's now got a warning. I don't know. If that last interaction was within the remit of our current rules, which I believe it is, obviously, because it's happened, then that's probably something I want to change, because I actually feel really uncomfortable for you. That wasn't pleasant. Yep, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak? Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Don't feel too bad, Councillor Byrne. I'm the one with the most amount of warnings in this chamber, so look, I can see both sides of the argument here. I think a deferral is probably a good idea with some of the interactions that have happened over this council period. I think maybe we should reflect, have a look at the rules once again, and maybe just refine it and just fine-tune it just a little bit better, so our meetings can progress in a quarterly manner.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I will support this motion because it is very important that we have governance rules that govern the way that meetings run. I do object to the idea that the governance rules haven't been able to manage the events of tonight. I think that the governance rules have provisions. They've been used effectively, and that the tone of a meeting can't be corrected by changes to the governance rules with respect to my colleagues. So I'm happy to work with councillors on further things that they believe need to be changed. I didn't think... I thought we were in a position to do that tonight through a few suggested amendments. I'm disappointed that that hasn't occurred, but I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Isa.
Thank you. Look, governance rules are obviously really important to the way we conduct our meetings. From my perspective this evening, some things have gone wrong, but it's not to do with the governance rules. It's to do with behaviour around the chamber. And I certainly do feel as though some of the behaviour tonight was disrespectful of myself. I tried to move a point of order twice and was interrupted by two different colleagues when I tried to do so. I tried to move a point of order about another colleague, in my view and in my opinion, being disrespectful of me while I was speaking. So I don't think that the governance rules haven't been used appropriately. I think that there's been behaviour around the chamber that's been disrespectful. And that can be followed up in a number of ways, whether it's around the use of the governance rules tonight or whether it's through other mechanisms, whatever people choose to do. But our governance rules are really serious, and we had a really late flurry this evening of a whole lot of rules being suddenly flung at us for consideration, which is entirely inappropriate with respect to governance rules. So I'm quite happy to go to further work because that gives us some time to consider some different options for the things that were otherwise going to be put on the floor tonight without, in my view, due consideration. I also just wanted to really briefly reflect on the comment that was made around whether or not there should be audio-visual recording of events in the chamber other than the camera that we have. And there are a couple of reasons not to do so. One of those is that staff and visitors deserve respect and privacy and deserve not to have to worry about being recorded. The other reason, plainly apparent to this evening probably as well, is that as colleagues, you know that I unfortunately and not too infrequently suffer from panic attacks during meetings, and I appreciate that when that happens the cameras can be quickly turned off. I don't think that it would be helpful to anyone who suffers from any kind of health issue to have to worry about whether or not there might be other cameras that are going on, and I think that limiting recordings is appropriate for providing a degree of safety and privacy within the chamber. So I don't agree with any of the comments made tonight that the governance rules haven't worked well for us. There are obviously tweaks that are sometimes needed. I'll just ask for 15 seconds more, Mayor, if I may.
Approved.
But I do think that governance rules are only as good as we are, and it's our behaviour that I think we need to reflect on.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak? As there has been some dissent, Councillor Nation, I'll ask if you would like to close.
Yeah, I don't know if I can write a reply given the it's sort of basic. I guess for me, the idea about audio, visual, and it does predate when the community had a camera in their pocket, is the idea that our gallery is a public space. Everyone in our community's got a right to be in the gallery, and therefore, if someone in that public place wishes to use their iPhone to take a photo, that's sort of the way it is, really. I had a friend in the back, a friend who I sent him a message, and because they were in the background of a photo on the Moonee Valley Instagram from the Anzac Day service, and they were in the background. I don't think they put in a consent form, but they're there on our Instagram because they were in a public place, and they still took a photo. So I just think that when our meeting is open to the public, and the gallery is a public place, and if someone wants to come and make a boomerang video, then that's okay. Now, when the meeting's closed or when the meeting stops, and that mightn't be a public space anymore, rules might change. But I just think the rules to the public need to be consistent, that if we're taking photos of people in public places and putting them on Moonee Valley Instagram, then they've got the same right in this public place. I just think that's probably fair. Otherwise, I don't think there was anything else I can reply to with the motion on hand.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We now move on to item 10, notices of motion, and we have one on the agenda tonight. And so I call on Councillor Sypek in 10.1 to present his notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2023/18, Signage in Sporting Reserves Planning Scheme Amendment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To take notice that at the meeting of Council, it is my intention to move that Council resolve to receive a report regarding the preparation of a planning scheme amendment to allow for the erection of sponsorship signage by sporting clubs in sporting reserves within public parks and recreational zones and public use zones.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The reason why I brought this notice of motion is that public signage, sponsorship signage on our sporting ovals and recreation zones and open space has become a slight issue in this municipality. And there have been other councils that have got a planning scheme amendment to allow for a fair and equitable compromise. And some of these councils have worked it quite well. And I think it's about due time that Moonee Valley goes down the same path to make sponsorship signage within our municipality fair and equitable.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bedio.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Sypek, for putting this forward. I think this is so important and something that we've been working on as a council quite a lot over the last few years. Most recently, sorry, in our
Do you need a moment? In
our community, I can't remember the exact name of the policy, but the community guidelines for sports signage, I believe, is the name of the policy. And the concept is, whilst not technically within the realms of the planning scheme, it's to set a standard for what we would expect as council to be an acceptable level of signage that sporting clubs can utilise. I do hear some rumblings every now and then from certain people in the community that are unhappy with the situation. But to be quite frank, I think it's something we need to move on with. Every sporting club throughout the state, well, I won't say every, but I'd say 99% of sports clubs in the state have sporting signage in sports fields. It's something that's been done for a very long time, and it's something that's really important to sporting clubs for funding. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of people in this municipality that play sport and rely on their sports club for participation, socialising and fitness. Yet we hear from a small group of people who are vocally opposed to sports signage, and I believe that council is spending all this time and money pretty much listening to what I would consider to be squeaky wheels, and I'm a little bit over it, to be honest, and I think we need to move forward with a planning scheme amendment to support our sporting clubs who do so much great work in this municipality, and let's just get on with the planning scheme amendment so that sporting clubs can have their sports signage, because it is so important to them, and I think it's something that needs to be done, so happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support this one as well. I think we're on a good pathway, and Councillor Bedio mentioned the community guidelines. Councillor Sypek's mentioned a fair and equitable solution, and one that supports our clubs and people using the public space. And I think, you know, from what I understand in previous reports that have come to us about the attempts to have a planning scheme amendment, it is reasonably complex the way that our land parcels for PPRZ land are not bundled, I guess, is the problem, in the way that Marybeck had. And, you know, knowing something about land tenure, I think it's, you know, if we are able to, after our 12-month trial of the community guidelines, propose something to the planning department at state government level that will resolve the issue, I think we're really well placed. So I'm happy to support this notice of motion and continue moving along the path that we're set on.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Sypek. Practical, pragmatic way forward, and hopefully a definitive resolution, which we've been talking about sponsorship signage for near on 3 years in this term. So I think it is, this is the way forward. There are a lot of holding patterns we can do and so forth, but this is the way forward. And I think the we all understand there's a fair medium when it comes to sponsorship signage, and I think clubs have realised that over the past 12 to 18 months as well, that there is the importance of recognising your sponsors and your programs partners and the people that make your clubs function and run, but there is also ensuring that you don't go overboard. And I think we've got a good mix now. The issue is that it's not consistent with the PPRZ, so this is the way we resolve that. And I think if sponsorship signs at sporting grounds are the price we have to pay for our sporting clubs to keep functioning, it's a pretty small price. You think about what we as a council get out of our sporting clubs. Think about how much of MV 2040, about a healthy city, supporting our youth. Think about how much is done by sporting clubs to help tick off parts of MV 2040, our aspirational vision, without us even having to do anything other than say, here's your allocation. You know, they keep the kids active, they give them that sense of camaraderie and that teamwork. They're run predominantly by...
Council Nation, your time has
Oh,
expired.
have I? Jeez. All right.
Would you like an extension?
No, that's all right.
No? Thank you. Would any other council like to speak?
Clock gets it. I didn't go.
Councillor Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to support all comments made by my colleagues. Thank you, Councillor Sypek, for progressing this issue, which is extremely important, and we can't lose sight of the final place where we want to be with all this, which will be through a planning scheme amendment. So well done to bringing it to us so we can continue to be progressed. It really is vitally important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would any other council like to speak? Councillor Nation?
I've been told it was 42 seconds I spoke for.
Okay. I'll confer with governance.
Am I allowed to...
Just a sec.
It's all right, don't worry. It's all good. I got my point across. That's all right.
In good faith, I'm happy to allow you to speak. Would any other council like to speak? As there has not been dissent, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We now move on to item 11, urgent business. Do we have any urgent business, councillors? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor, I do, but it is in relation to a property matter in Rosehill Ward and it is confidential, so I'd like it to be considered under confidential.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll therefore move to item 12, confidential reports, to consider the confidential urgent business item. Can I have a mover and seconder that council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss the property matter in Niddrie as it is considered confidential under the terms of section 3(1) as it contains or may contain confidential information relating to G, private commercial information, being information provided by a business, commercial or financial undertaking that 2, if released, would unreasonably expose the business, commercial or financial undertaking to disadvantage, more specifically being council, commercial and financial undertakings. Is there a mover? Councillor Sypek. A seconder? Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. And so we therefore say good night to members of the public who are watching. So thank you for joining us.